All right, so we are going to go through the Maverix Paddle lineup and help you guys to figure out which paddle is best suited for you. At the time of recording this video, we have 6 total paddles in our lineup, but by the time you guys watch this, that may have changed. So, starting with our Maverix 16 paddles, we have the Maverix 16 Control, we have the Maverix 16 Power, we have the Maverix 15 All Court, and the Maverix 15 Pro. And then we move over to another shape of paddle, and that's our Clash paddles. So we have the Clash 15 All Court and the Clash 15 Pro. And I know it can be very confusing, but that's where I'm going to try to simplify this as much as possible. So obviously you saw 2 different paddle shapes. And what we've tried to do is, by the name designator, anytime that you see Maverix, it is going to be this paddle shape. They are the exact same paddle shapes. All the Maverix paddles are the exact same. They are all 16.5 inches long. They are all 7.5 inches wide. They all have 5.33 inch handles. The dimensions on all the Maverix paddles are going to be the exact same. And we've done that to try to make this as simplified as possible. And then we move over to the Clash paddles. The Clash paddles are going to be 16.2 inches long. They're going to be 7.7 inches wide with a 5.5 inch handle. Now, just real quick, none of these paddles are better than any of the other ones. It's simply a difference of playability or how the paddles play. But again, that doesn't make any of them better than the other. It's just what is best suited for you. So we're going to start with what I would say is at the bottom of our paddle lineup. And when I say the bottom of our paddle lineup, I'm going to say the most beginner-friendly paddle. And that is going to be our Maverix 16 Control. I've already gone over the dimensions of the paddle, but this is a 16 millimeter core paddle, so it's generally going to be a little bit softer paddle. And it does have control in its name for a reason, and that's why we say this is our most beginner-friendly paddle. It is going to be very forgiving. It's going to have a huge sweet spot because of how it's built, but that does come at the sacrifice of some pop and power. They're still very powerful paddles, but not as powerful or poppy as our other paddle lineup. In general, if you're just starting out, this paddle is probably best suited for you. Now, if you've been playing a month or so or have a little bit of a racket sport background, our Maverix 16 Power would probably be the next progression. And while it does have power in the name, that is a little bit confusing because when we built this paddle, this was considered a power paddle. But now in 2024, it would be considered a control paddle. Like I said, we've already gone over the dimensions of this paddle. This is the Maverix 16 Power, so it does have a 16 millimeter core, and it is thermoformed. It is going to have more power and more pop as compared to our Maverix 16 Control, and it is still going to be a very control-oriented paddle. Now, as you move up and as you progress, you get into our Maverix 15 paddle line, and this is a much more aggressive paddle. This is going to be for higher level players that have a more aggressive play style, that have been playing long enough to where they can consistently hit the sweet spot on their paddles. Now, when we start with the All Court, this paddle is still going to have a lot of pop and power, and it's going to have more pop and power than the Maverix 16 Control or Maverix 16 Power. So the Maverix 15 All Court does have more pop and power than the Maverix 16 Power. This paddle is going to be a lot more forgiving than the Pro paddle, but it's not going to have as much pop and power. And in general, we recommend that this All Court paddle is best suited for a player that's been playing about 6 months or more and has a duper rating of roughly 3 to 4.0. Now, when we get into our Maverix 15 Pro, This is labeled a pro paddle for a reason. It is built to have more pop and power, and it is very powerful and it is very poppy. And what does that mean? That means that you sacrifice control because the face of the paddle is stiffer. So while it will hit very hard and the ball will come off very fast, if you don't hit this paddle consistently in the sweet spot, it is going to be less forgiving than the rest of our paddle lineup. That's not to say that it doesn't have good control, because it is a very, very good control-oriented paddle as well. We just don't recommend it for newer players or anybody below, about a 4.5 duper rating or 4 to 4.5 duper rating. Just because, like I said, you need to make sure that you're very familiar with your paddle and can hit the sweet spots consistently on these paddles. Now, when you move over to our Clash paddles, they're obviously different shapes. It doesn't mean that they're better or worse than the Havik paddles, just different shapes. It's like the body on a car. Some people like the Honda Civics, some people like the Honda Accords. They're just different cars. They are a little bit different dimensions. So this paddle is going to be 16.2 inches long versus the 16.5 inch on the Havik paddle, and it is going to be 7.7 inches wide, so a little bit wider than the Havik paddles. And the handle is going to be 5.5 inches long versus 5.33 on the Havik paddles. So this paddle is going to have a slightly longer handle. Again, that doesn't make either paddle better or worse. It just changes the playability of the paddle. These paddles, in general, are going to feel like they have a slightly larger sweet spot because of how wide the paddle is. But they're going to feel like they have slightly less power opposed to the elongated paddle, and that is because with the elongated paddle, they're longer, so you have more mass at the top of the paddle. Within our Clash paddle lineup, we have the All Court and the Pro. And just like the Havik paddles, they're going to be built the same materials as our Havik 15 lineup. The Clash 15 is a more control-oriented paddle opposed to the Clash 15 Pro. These paddles are still going to be very aggressive play style paddles. We recommend the All Court paddle for a person that has about a 3.0 to 4.0 duper rating, and our Pro paddle we recommend for about a 4.0 to 4.5 duper rating and above. And again, that's simply because it's a stiffer material that's going to produce more pop and power, but that's at the expense of control. Now, I hope that helps you guys out and clarifies a little bit. We have some more information on our buying guide here on our website, but if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out and ask us. Thanks.